What's going on, people? Kish Yardy Gaming Nation. And I've seen this interview. First of all, when you come into my house, like, share, and subscribe. Second thing I have to speak on. When you subscribe to my channel, you're subscribing to the content that I put out, right? You're not going to subscribe to content that you want me to put out. If you want me to do a content on something or do a story on something, donate to me or ask me if you want me to do it, but donate at the same time. Right. And if it's a story that, I could do it on, I would do it on it. But let's make this clear. I do the stories about topics that I want to do the stories about. You feel me? What I want to do. From my perspective, from my point of view. All right. Don't subscribe to my channel. Then unsubscribe from my channel because I put out content today that you like and then tomorrow you don't like. You feel me? And from the very beginning, when I started this channel, I said that I'm looking for people who are intellectual and who are intelligent. Whether you agree with me or disagree with me. But don't subscribe and then unsubscribe because today I post something you like and then tomorrow I post something you don't like. You feel me? Which I'm not looking for them type of niggas to subscribe to me anyway. You feel me? But this live takes the cake. This live right here, this live gonna take the cake today. Because on this live, we gonna talk about Hunter Biden and some of the hypocrisies that Hunter Biden, especially from Joe Biden era, like the fact that you got this man who was on crack, admittedly in this video, drunk. He was a drunk head. He was a crackhead. He was a dope head on this video in a retreat. Meanwhile, during the 1994 crime bill, when Joe Biden was proposing it to the Senate, he admitted that what was going on with Black America was the fault of was the failures of American society. And Joe Biden didn't say, okay, cool, we're going to create trade school programs. We're going to take away the dope that's being funneled into the Black community or into American society. We're going to create trade schools and manhood programs just to show these young Black men how America can be beneficial to them. No. Joe Biden said, no, we're going to lock these niggas up. Right? So it's rehab for Hunter, but prison for us. He signed on the crime bill. He crafted a philosophy on one that said, yeah, maybe we created the conditions that ruin Black communities, but I don't care. Lock them up anyway. That was his message. He admitted that Black people were victims of a broken society, victims of redlining, victims of underfunded schools, victims of joblessness, victims of a government that pumped, allegedly, drugs into their neighborhoods. We acknowledge this. But did he advocate for healing? Did he push for rehab, job programs, capital access, trade schools for Black people, for Black communities in his urban centers? No, he called them an urban jungle, is what he called them. Urban jungle. And Joe Biden's solution, a Democrat that's supposed to be liberal and all these things and equality and all this shit, advocated for putting niggas in prison. Decades of it. Decades of Black men being falsely accused. Mandatory minimums, three strikes and you're out. And the reason why I say falsely accused is because we have something called the Innocence Project that's looking into these cases that Black men were falsely accused of doing, and then coming back and say, oh shit, no, we got to overturn this case. This police officer, he lied. This police officer, he put drugs on his boy. This is the environment that Joe Biden created. And he didn't properly do anything about it. He didn't properly create laws or anything. He didn't properly apologize for it. He didn't create laws or institutions to do away with some of these things that he created. A lot of black kid boys that went to jail because a black, not a, my fault, excuse me. Let me slow down. A lot of black men, boys, young kids went to jail because a judge wanted to get a kickback on commissions to put money in his pocket. So, how many court cases where a judge in New York or a judge in Philadelphia sent a black boy to jail or prison, right? Knowing what was going on was unfair, unjustified, but he sent them there anyway to get money in his pocket. This is the environment that Joe Biden created in America, his biggest sin. Yet, his son sits on a, my fault, sits on a interview and he gets to tell his story. And like with most white men that I've seen, whether they're Italian or Irish, and they were part of the mob back in the 80s and the 90s, and all those European men who dealt dope, sold dope into their communities. Because don't get it twisted. It wasn't just niggas getting high off of crack cocaine and dope and drugs. Everybody was getting high off of crack cocaine and dope and drugs in the 80s and the 90s. This is an environment or a thing that European men involved themselves into and also engaged in. They engaged in it. And every time you see them old mob bosses get on Vlad TV, they say, well, we was trying to live the American dream. And their sins are absolved. And I'm getting real tired of white men doing bullshit in the past and then them getting on TV and society forgives them and excuses them for it. But when a nigga does it, and when a nigga was doing it, trying to survive like every other person in America, they tell him he should have known better. And they give him some moral fucking high ground bullshit. And they still hold him accountable for sins in his past. Meanwhile, the white man gets absolved of his sins of the past. Hunter Biden gets absolved of his sins of his past. He gets to sit at a fucking comfortable resort and rehab while niggas get locked in a cell. Niggas get taken from their pops. Like I said, the Innocence Project. Overturning these cases. Nonviolent offenses. Come to find out they didn't do it. DNA testing. Come to find out they didn't do it. Come to find out the police was lying. This is what black men dealt with. And Joe Biden, to this date, has not truly, officially made amends to it. All right, let's go into this interview. All right, go ahead.
Almost a handle of vodka a day. And alcohol is the most destructive drug, not just to your body, but it puts you in more danger than any other drug that I've ever experienced. And then you add on top of that the amount of crack that I was using at the time. And
so how was alcohol? So if alcohol was the most destructive drug you can put into the human body, why did Joe Biden pass bills based upon this? The irony, Joe Biden's 1994 crime bill, which he championed, contributed to the mass incarceration of black men during the so-called war on drugs. Was there a war on alcohol? Or was there a war on drugs? It imposed harsher penalties for crack cocaine associated more with black communities than powder cocaine associated more with white users. See the fuckery right there? That's the bullshit right there. This nigga, you got on this platform, Hunter Biden, and you said, excuse me if I'm pissed. You said that alcohol is more destructive than cocaine, but your daddy passed a crime bill and imposed harsher penalties for crack than powder cocaine associated with more white users. But alcohol is more destructive? Like, what are you talking about? Why can't this shit just go back to what I put it on, my niggas? Like, come on, bro. I mean, come on, let's get it.
Crack cocaine, in terms of your physical health, is not as dangerous as the situation that you put yourself in to be able to obtain it.
How do you
Do you hear the double talk? No. I want y'all to hear the double talk he just said. I want y'all to hear the double talk he just said. The flaw in his logic.
Than any other drug that I've ever experienced. And then you add on top of that the amount of crack that I was using at the time. And crack cocaine, in terms of your physical health, is not as dangerous as the situation that you put yourself in.
You're putting yourself in a situation to get the crack cocaine because of the crack you're taking, you idiot. These are people that held office, Democrats. These are people in your that held office and was doing important shit. Democrats, niggas, the nigga caucus. All I want to show my face, niggas, the Negro caucus of Black America. These are your champions. These are your heroes. These are your heroes, your champions. That if I don't vote Democrat, I ain't black. I ain't a real nigga, according to y'all.
To be able to obtain it.
how do you get crack?
One of the things I don't want to do is give a how-to.
The nigga sound and laugh just like his crime bill Joe Biden. Joe Biden crime bill, he laughed just like his daddy. This clip was the first time I've ever heard how this dude talk, Hunter Biden talks. He sounds and laugh just like his daddy. I guess dysfunction runs into the family.
To any moron like myself that may think that it's a good idea. But crack cocaine is I am fully aware when I'm talking about it in relationship to my own experience with it. It is still a shocking thing for most people, because we have been fed this perception of crack cocaine. It's more than just a drug. It's more than, like, if you say meth or if you say heroin or if you say cocaine, it comes with a whole bunch of different baggage. And because of that, places that you can go get it are some of the most dangerous places in whatever location you happen to be in. And it's everywhere. Mainly.
We're going to address the thing he said. I want to go back. Look how his legs is crossed. His legs is crossed like Barack Obama's legs is crossed. What's wrong with these dudes? Is there something wrong with these what are these niggas right here? Anyway, something wrong with these niggas right here, right? Between Barack Obama and this dude Hunter Biden, all of them got their legs crossed up like this. Anyway.
With a whole bunch of different baggage. And because of that, places that you can go get it are some of the whole bunch of different, like if you say meth, shocking thing for most people. My own experience with it, it is still a shocking thing for most people, because we have been fed this perception of crack cocaine. It's more than just a drug. It's more than, like, if you say meth or if you say heroin or if you say cocaine, it comes with a whole bunch of different baggage. And because of that, places that you can go get it are some of the most dangerous places in whatever location you have.
So why didn't you just do cocaine? That was the powder one. See, this is the bullshit I'm speaking of, right? Look at this. Look at this. So a whole bill was passed around this, and it affected black people the most because it was cocaine. Like, come on, bro. You learn how to make your own? Look at him fighting with the bees. He getting attacked by bees, Hunter Biden. Hold on. I gotta find this. I gotta find this. Uh, by B. I gotta find this. You know what this reminds me of? This right here. This is what that reminds me of. Hold on.
Oh, what? It's a big ass bumblebee
This is what it reminds me of.
You don't think I'm gonna fall for that crap, do you? I'm allergic to bees. If I get stung, I'm gonna seize up and die. Oh, they won't touch you. Oh. All right, look. That's it. Yeah. I'm gonna tell you. Look. Help, he's trying to kill me. Help, he's trying to kill me. Hey, get down.
That's what that reporter reminded me of when Joe Biden, when they was getting attacked by that beat on national security. What the hell? Why is this shit not staying on the stage, bro? On the motherfucking stage, man. That's what that reminds me
These
of.
are.
Good morning, America and the world. My name is Andrew Callahan.
Hey, so shout out to this brother here, Andrew Calloway. I'm gonna give you a subscriber. Channel 5 with Andrew Callaghan. Shout out to the brother right here.
The host and
Hey, the new media is YouTube. The new newscasters is people like myself and this brother right here. So we the new media of today. Shout out to the Angry Man because he always points us out that we're the like new media of today. And the best part about us being the new media, you get to hear actual authentic viewpoints, and it's not scripted for you, right? You get to actually hear honest, and you're not stuck to MSNBC or the regular news media. You have other options and opinions, and you can fact check people like me, right? Because I don't claim to be the perfect author of truth, right? You can fact check what I say. This is why the whole point why I do the PDF presentations, so you can slow down the video and then you can go fact check what I put out there for you, right? But yeah, let's subscribe to this brother.
creator of Channel 5, the largest independent.
That we're looking to get clean and sober. One of the things about
When you say you almost died, can you kind of give us some more context?
I was a drinker, and at the end, my addiction had progressed so much that it was potentially deadly on a daily basis. The thing that was the most concerning and the most real about facing death was in actuality the alcohol. Once you fall into that lifestyle, and I wouldn't call it a lifestyle because there's no life to it at all. You enter a completely different world in which you're living kind of completely outside of the bounds of any communal.
So the alcohol was worse than the crack cocaine? I don't know, man.
Norms. I don't know. It's a scary place to be.
I've seen some scary crackheads growing up in East Europe, Brooklyn, and Queens. I don't know. And I've seen some drunk niggas. So most I see what drunk niggas do, they fall out and they fucking go to bed. Right there on the concrete. Crackheads though, especially if they're on like acid and shit. Woof.
And I met some of the most truly heroic, astounding, thoughtful, kind people that I've ever met in my life that are living, lives of quiet desperation, not quiet, very.
No shit. Angry Man, he was doing a live show on this, and he was like, if you're a nigga from the hood, every crackhead got this imaginary story down crackhead memory lane and shit. I'm like, no, he's not lying. Growing up in East New York, Brooklyn, like listening to a crackhead tell a story. It was like sitting around like a fire, like a bonfire. You hear your old grandpa or uncle telling them stories about how much boxer used to get, or old war stories or ghost stories, or like in Jamaica when I'm out Duppet story, ghost story. You know what I'm saying? Listen to crackhead. It's funny. You don't know if he lying. You don't know if he's telling the truth. And a lot of times, there's be some wisdom in what he's saying logically, but you just don't know if the story's facts, though. You know what I'm saying? But a crackhead will take you on a storybook journey down crackhead lane. So
Very loud desperation.
listening to a crackhead tell a story is like watching Naruto Shippuden, nigga, and you watching the whole Ninja War arc going on, or you watching Dragon Ball Z and Goku fighting the whole all of universe 50 billion, nigga. And yeah, Goku got going on the whole story and how he transformed into Super Saiyan 10,000. That was like listening to a crackhead.
But even in that, found space in their hearts for empathy and kindness. And I've met some.
He said empathy and kindness. Did niggas get any empathy and kindness? Where was the empathy and kindness for this? Huh? What? Where was the empathy and kindness for in the 80s and in 1994 for black men who the reason why they had to go deal dope? See, this is the story that's not being told fully. The reason why black men had to go deal dope, which was not the majority of black men doing this, was because of at that time you had the NAFTA agreement that came in, right? And what happened was black men lost a lot of jobs, trade jobs and manufacturing jobs that they had previous to that. And then black men had to adjust and adapt to corporate America. The problem with going to work in corporate America is that a lot of the corporate American companies, they were hiring mainly white women and black women, because black women are women and they're minorities, and white women are the larger minority, which is crazy to me because they're considered as minority, even though they're part of the dominant group, which makes no logical sense, but whatever. But yeah, so black men had to adjust to corporate America. The problem with black men adjusting to corporate America now is it's a lot of white bosses up there that already don't like black men around their white women like that. So, black men were denied capital on two fronts. One from capital from from corporate America, and the other capital from the manufacturing company, right? And I'm saying, and I think I did a slide or a PDF about some of the. This is where you get EEOC and a lot of the affirmative actions, even though black men still didn't benefit from these things. But when you look up EEOC and affirmative action, they address a lot of the interview questions that might have been neutral in nature, but the intention had a racist intention behind it. It's like something that they'll say to black men, you don't fit our culture. You know what I'm saying? Meaning you're too black, or our culture is more feminine and gynocentric, and you're too masculine and dominant. Is what the translation is what they want to say, right? So a lot of black men, especially straight black men, were denied capital access from corporate America, right? So that's what happened during the 90s. Growing up, I used to hear a lot of black men getting laid off from certain shit, laid off from construction jobs and all this other stuff, laid off from manufacturing jobs and things like this matter. I'd watch black men go to corporate America and get interviews and 50 interviews. I think they did a study about that. You feel me? But yeah, like then the crime bill came in, I guess, to remedy that problem that was being created by the NAFTA agreement, right? Which didn't affect white people as heavy, because like I said, during that time, you had multiple different European men engaging in crack cocaine or in the selling of dope or drugs. You know what I'm saying? The Irish was involved, the Russians were involved, the Italians was heavy in it. Look up the movie Hoodlum with Frank, or American Gangster with Frank Lucas. You know what I'm saying? So even in the movie for American Gangster with Frank Lucas in it, right? What's his name was involved into it. The police. There was a police officer involved in the dope game in there. So you know what I'm saying. But black men are the ones who get blamed for that.
as well?
One of the things that I've realized is that addiction is one of the most universal conditions. I don't know many people that have not been impacted by it in some way, whether it's addiction to drugs. I don't know many people that have not been impacted. Is one of the most universal.
Let me see what's missing from here. Okay, this is in July 2019. So the timeline is there. This is from 2019. College grads drinking, female male, no degree, weekly churchgoers, seldom never attend service. So this is very limited. Has drinking drug abuse ever been a cause of family trouble? This is very limited scope because when you go to a college campus, there's a lot of drinking going on college campus. You know what I'm saying? Parties and shit like that. So you're getting the male and female population, and it's coming from college grads or no degree. This is just saying no degree. You know what I'm saying? Most people in average life, they're gonna be drinking more alcohol than they do drugs, like hardcore drugs like cocaine. And when you say drugs, what do you mean? Talking about crack cocaine or meth or fentanyl? Right. So there's a lot of things missing from this graph. So what the thing with critical thinking and comprehension is when you look at these statistics, you got to see what's there and you got to see what's missing. And then you got to analyze everyday life and society and how people operate in everyday life and society, right? So, for example, they did male and female, right? Female, they drink more, they do a lot, drink more, right? And so did the light red is more drugs, the burgundy red is more drinking, right? So they did male and female. Then they go to college grads, right? Well, in college, they do more drinking in parties than they do drugs, right? Then you go into no degree. This is when you say no degree, what does that mean? Does that mean everyday life? Does that mean in everyday average civilian population? Right? Because then now you have to get more specific with that. All right. Then you go to weekly churchgoers, right? Then you go to seldom never attend service. So this is between church. So this is a specific group. Let me see, around 1,000 US adults surveyed in July 2019, multiple answers provided. Source, Gallup. So this is a survey. So these are people going around asking questions in specific groups. This is not general population, right? This is a general population. This is not a general population. This is a specific group. Going to a church and then not going to church. This is a specific peer group, and this is being a survey. This is not a general statistic. It's being done by a statista, right? What's missing now, like I said, on college campuses, they drink more than they do drugs. And when you say no degree, where's the no degree at? What do you mean? You feel me? And let's say that the no degree is this is the general population right here, right? Most people in general population, they're going to be drinking more than they're doing hard drugs like cocaine or crack or meth. You see what I'm saying? They're gonna be drinking more, like Guinness or Heineken or tequila. But that's not saying they're getting drunk. Let's say you go to a barbecue, you go to a bar, you go to a party event, house party event, block party. You feel me? Or everyday life, like you got wine coolers and shit that got like certain small levels of alcohol in it, right? So in the everyday general population, of course, you're going to be doing more drinking than you're doing drugs. Who's gonna now publicly go on a train or at a barbecue event sniff some crack cocaine like that? So
Universal conditions. I don't know many people that have not been impacted by it in some way, whether it's addiction to drugs or addiction to behaviors. They have the same dilatory effect on not just you, but more importantly, on your immediate community, your family, and then it just spirals outward. And I don't know anybody that hasn't been impacted by drugs and alcohol in a really.
Joe Biden, you're known for doing crack, not drinking. Why do these people think we stupid?
Significant way, or at least a way in which it's created trauma in their own personal lives and the lives of those that they really love. And so while it's universal, it's something that we rarely talk about. And it's kind of the way in which we treat drug use it's something that someone else is doing, and that someone else happens to be your brother, your sister, your mom, your dad, yourself, your coworker. And it only becomes a problem when it becomes a problem for you.
Do you think that you would have been treated differently by the media if your addiction was to an opiate or perhaps methamphetamine as opposed to crack, which kind of has a racialized context to it?
Well, maybe I don't know, because it depends upon what media you're talking about. Because I like, what is the media? You know, I think it was just an added bonus for them that they could say crack addict and everybody would go, oh my God, he's a monster. So I think.
Well, yes, because that's how they view black men. Black men were viewed as monsters for selling crack and went to prison for selling crack. So yes, my nigga, this is part of your legacy, part of your father's legacy, bro.
For those that wanted to use it as a bludgeon, it's easier when you slap the word crack addict onto it. It made me a lot easier target for the Don Juniors of the world, you know, the Marjorie Taylor Greens of the world, just because of their inherent kind of meanness about things. But I'm not a victim here.
It wasn't.
I was a crack addict.
You don't think that black men were unfairly targeted by this? You don't think when Joe Biden was drafting that bill, read this, it imposed harsher penalties for crack cocaine associated more with black communities than powder cocaine associated more with white users. You think this was targeting black men unfairly? You don't think that was? And you don't think what y'all was doing to Trump and Donald Trump was unfair, what y'all was doing to them? So y'all get to play dirty, but the Republicans have to be moral. Just like black people or black men, straight black men, there's a moral standard posted on us, but everybody else gets to be savage. Make all that make sense, man.
You know, I wrote about it. I was transparent about it. I wasn't naive to the idea that somehow that would be something that anyone or everyone would be able to fully comprehend and have empathy for. We're lacking empathy across the board, not just for Hunter Biden. But I guess I was a little bit surprised in terms of a lot of people in the press, whether it was the New York Times or the New York Post, kind of dismissed addiction as somehow unique to my family, or without taking analytical thesis was on the disparity between crack and powder cocaine sentencing. That was in 1996, in which, I mean, we knew then. And, you know, that's when my dad became president. He did away with all of that. And I think that Obama did part of it and he eradicated it all. And then he pardoned almost everybody at the very end of his administration that had been swept up and were still in prison as it related to those disparities in federal sentencing. Obviously, he has no control of the state, but hundreds of people were commuted sentences and were pardoned.
And you feel like
lie. So, I'm glad I came up here today. This is what I mean by him lying. All right. That's what I mean by him lying. I'm going to go through all of this. What they claim that Joe Biden did to rectify the crime bill. When liberals and Democratic loyalists say Biden fixed the damage he caused, they usually point out the following: reality, the First Step Act 2018. Reality, that wasn't even Biden's bill. It was passed under Donald Trump with bipartisan support. What they claim Biden supported it and was continued its principles. What? Problem: supporting a law someone else passed is not rectifying harm you personally cause. Just like starting a fire and clapping when someone else brings the water, right? The 2010 so we're gonna break this down a little bit later. I want to get to the Pacifica parts, right? So this part, rhetorical acknowledgement. In interviews, Biden has admitted that the 1994 crime bill had a negative effects. He said things like it was a mistake or some parts went too far. Acknowledging harm doesn't equal fixing harm. He has never offered direct reparations, investment, or structural repair to the Black communities destroyed by policies he championed. No targeted programs to rebuild the lives of those jailed under that bill. Increased funding for public defenders, criminal justice reform. Some of Biden's budgets included money for legal aid, community-based violence programs, mental health support. Problem: these are incremental, generic changes, not targeted redress for what crime bill did. They don't undo decades of damage inflicted on Black men, right? What Biden hasn't done, but could have. No formal apology to Black America for its role in mass incarceration. No clemency campaign for nonviolent drug offenders sentenced under the laws he wrote. No federal investment package to rebuild the communities ravaged by the war on drugs. No executive order to restore voting rights, expunge records, or make reparative justice real, right? So when liberals say rectified it, they're often just repeating talking points from MSNBC or DNC PR. Confusion symbolism with substance, right? Confusing symbolism with substance. Ignoring that the vast majority of people harmed by the crime bill are still living with consequences. Joe Biden has not rectified the crime bill. He has barely acknowledged it. And the communities destroyed by it are still waiting on justice, not words, not symbolism, but repair. All right? So this is something else. Which we're going to go into. So this is the Future Act. There's something else I wanted to show specifically. All right, so let me jump off that. Let me remove that and then go into this. Let me see this. No, that's not it. So remove that and go into here. Okay, so what he was talking about with Barack Obama when he said the Fair Sentencing Act of 2010, signed into law August 3rd, 2010 by President Barack Obama. Main purpose to reduce the racist sentencing disparity between crack cocaine and powder cocaine offenses, which had devastated Black communities since the 1980s. The original problem: under the 1986 drug law, 5 grams of crack cocaine equals 5-year mandatory minimum. 500 grams of powder cocaine equals same 5-year minimum. That's 100-to-1 ratio. What did that affect? Black men were overwhelmingly charged with crack offenses. White offenders were more likely to be charged with powder cocaine. This sentencing gap was one of the biggest contributors to mass incarcerations of Black Americans in the 80s and 90s. What the Fair Sentencing Act did: raise the amount of crack cocaine needed for a 5-year mandatory minimum from 5 grams to 28 grams. Eliminate the 5-year mandatory minimum for simple possession of crack cocaine. Apply to new sentences going forward. Why was it not retroactive? When it passed in 2010, it only applied to new convictions, not to people already serving long sentences for old crack offenses. Thousands of inmates, mostly Black men, were still in prison under the harsher 100-to-1 rule. What changed with the first? So now, Hunter Biden up here just lied. So let's go back to the lie he was lying, right?
like your paper at Yale.
Hundreds that distribute it. And, that's when my dad became president. He did away with all of that. And I think that Obama did part of it, and he eradicated it all. And then he pardoned almost everybody at the very end of his administration that had been swept up and were still in prison as it related to those disparities in federal sentencing. Obviously, he has no control of the state, but he.
Hold on, federal sentencing because of drug issues? He didn't say that. Let's see what he said.
Hundreds of people were commuted.
Women who led Biden commute sentences, women who led emergency response teams, church deacons who worked as counselors, doctoral students in molecular biosciences. What?
Sentences and were pardoned.
And you feel like your paper at Yale kind of helped implant that idea in his mind and help forward that cause?
No, I don't think he remembers my paper at Yale more than anybody remembers my paper at Yale. I think I'm the only one who remembers my paper at Yale. But I do know this, is that at the very end, I was...
Because it was trash.
It's the only thing that I can...
You were too big. No, I'm not going to
say that I truly weighed in on with my dad was on that level, and he was pushing on an open door. I think people forget the historic record number of people that he pardoned based upon the drug laws.
Also, he pardoned Leonard Peltier, or commuted his sentence from life imprisonment in Florida to house arrest at the Turtle Mountain Reservation.
I would never...
That's not who the crack cocaine affected the most. The crack cocaine era affected the most was black men. So let me go check with ChatGPT. Let's see what ChatGPT gonna say. Share, make sure this is showing. It's showing. So, was there a record number of people that Joe Biden pardoned? And was there a crack or crime bit, like a bill similar to the First Step Act that Biden passed during his presidency that freed a record number of black people, or a record number of people? Like, is there any truth to that? So, what's a commuted sentence? This is the first time I'm hearing that. Oh. But isn't that because of the First Step Act that Trump passed? So is Biden? Is it fair to say and honest to say that Biden is passing doing this because of he's riding the back of Donald Trump, First Step Act? So we're gonna go through this whole thing right here, right? Because these people think we stupid. Did Joe Biden grant a record number of pardons or commutations? Yes, Joe Biden issued more individual clemency actions than any president in modern U.S. history. As of early 2025, Biden was granted approximately approximately 4,245 individual pardons and commutations, more than totals for the Franklin D. Roosevelt during a 12-year term. On December 12, 2024, he carried out the largest single-day clemency action in modern history, commuting nearly 1,500 nonviolent sentences and pardoning 39 individuals. Then on January 17, 2025, he commuted nearly 2,500 additional drug offenders sentences, breaking the record for most clemency in a single day. Clarifying terminology. Bob Biden was issued fewer than 100 individual pardons. Most clemency actions were sentence commutations and blanket pardons, such as those issued for federal marijuana convictions. This explains why press reports say he set a record for clemency overall, but not individual pardons alone. Was there a crime bill Biden like First Step Act? No, Joe Biden did not pass a crime bill compared to the First Step Act. In 2008, was signed into law by Donald Trump, not Biden, and was built around the making the 2010 Fair Sentences Act retroactive, among other reforms. That law allowed thousands of inmates, typically black individuals, serving outdated crack cocaine sentences to petition for reduced sentences. It also incentivized rehabilitation, adjusted good time credits, and enabled compassionate releases. So, which I'm going to go into a slide, the reason why Barack Obama was able to Fair Sentencing Act of 2010 was able to release so many people was because Joe Biden's First Step Act beefed it up. It buffed it and made it retroactive to go back beyond or prior to 2010. All right. How Biden uses clemency power. December 2010 grants nearly 1,500 sentences, right? So then it goes to January 2025, community sentences of nearly 2,500 drug offenders, focusing on those affected by crack sentencing disparities. Issue blanket pardons for all federal civil possession of marijuana, impacting 6,500 people. Given sentences for 37 federal death row inmates to life without parole, except for 3 high-profile cases, right? Dylan Roof, which I think Chesnarov. Like, these people were high-crime, high-profile criminal people, those two. His actions were widely seen as targeted toward righting the harms caused by outdated drug laws, disproportionately affected Black Americans. They directly addressed the crack powder sentence disparity and offer second chances to thousands of people who had served excessive sentences. But I'm going to get into how Joe Biden didn't do this because of himself. We're going to see. No bill passed by Biden's function like the First Step Act. Instead, he used his presidential pardon commission power extensively, particularly focused on nonviolent drug offenders, many of whom were Black. The First Step Act 2018 made earlier reforms retroactive, enabling formerly sentenced individuals to petition for release. Biden did not pass a similar bill, but he exercised executive clemency to effectively reduce sentences for large numbers of people. These actions helped many Black Americans, particularly those harmed by crack sentencing laws. How come he couldn't get Barack Obama to do that? So apparently, this is a power that a president can do absent or void of any bill or act being passed into law. Barack Obama could have did this since 8 years. All right. Joe Biden's action, most clemency action in the office. All right. So I asked, because this is my first time actually hearing a commuted sentence. A commuted sentence means a reduction in punishment someone's serving, but it doesn't erase the conviction. Think of it like this. Legal terms pardon. What it means, completely forgives the crime. The record is wiped clean. Commutation. The sentence is shortened or reduced, but the person is still considered guilty. The sentence is shortened or reduced, but the person is still considered guilty. Let me read that again. Say it 3 times like Dr. Umar Johnson, like I'm trying to cast a spell on niggas. The sentence is shortened or reduced, but the person is still considered guilty. So your sentence is reduced or is shortened, but you're considered guilty. Remember, the First Step Act reversed convictions, right? Clemency. Umbrella term includes both partisan commutation, any act of mercy by the president or governor. For example, someone was sentenced 30 years in federal prison for nonviolent crack cocaine offenses in 1999. Under today's laws, they would only get 10 years. President Biden commutes their sentence to 2025, meaning they don't serve the full 30 years. They might be released early, possible immediately, but they still have a felony conviction on their record. Right? So commutation gives their freedom back, especially if their sentence was extremely outdated. But unlike a pardon, it doesn't clear their name. The criminal record remains only unless it's later expunged. Who can grant commutation? At the federal level, only the president can commute a federal sentence. At the state level, usually done by governors or state clemency boards. So this is why in this clip, Hunter Biden was like, there's nothing he can do about it when it comes to the state, right? So I asked ChatGPT, is Joe Biden doing this off the back, a wave of Donald Trump's First Step Act, right? And ChatGPT agreed. The foundation First Step Act, signed by Donald Trump, what it did, made the 2010 Fair Sentencing Act retroactive, finally fixing the crack versus powder sentencing disparity. Create a mechanism for inmates to request reduced sentences, earn good time credits for early release, participate in rehabilitation programs, enables judges to review and reconsider excessively long nonviolent drug sentences. This bill is why thousands of inmates, mostly black men, were eligible to even apply for sentence reduction. Violent actions 2021-2025, walking through the door Trump opened. Biden did not create a new structural reform bill like the First Step Act. What he did was use his executive power to grant mass sentence commutations and pardons, especially for nonviolent drug offenders. In 2024 and 2025, sets the record for the number of commutations issued. But most of the people by the community were only eligible because of the First Step Act, which was already in place thanks to Trump. So Biden wouldn't have even been able to do this if it was not for Trump's First Step Act. So it's Biden riding Trump's back. Yes, in terms of legal infrastructure. Biden's clemency campaign relied on the procedural doors that Trump opened. Without the First Step Act, these commutations and early releases would have been much harder or not possible at all. But Biden did act independently through executive power. He granted mass clemency, something Trump did more selectively. He expanded the impact through large-scale action, but didn't create a new form of law to keep it going long term. Right. So, question. I noticed that the commutation, or however you say it, it reduces sentences, but it doesn't reverse a conviction or it doesn't clean your record. Is that something that the First Step Act does? Oh, so it doesn't. Okay, so no, it doesn't. The First Step Act of 2018 allows sentence reduction, makes some sentences retroactively reviewable, improve chances of early release, but it does not erase or expunge your criminal record. It does not reverse conviction. So just like a commutation, it can shorten your term, but it still leaves you a felony conviction, a criminal record, potential obstacles to housing, employment loans, voting rights, etc. The only way to clean a record is method: pardon, expungement, sealing, hides your records. Neither the First Step Act nor the commutation includes automatic expungement or pardoning. All right. So now, is there a way under the First Step Act or provided by the First Step Act to make people who has a reduced sentences be able to find work after, after they get, their sentence is reduced or they get released immediately? Okay, so it incentivizes rehabilitation programs. Inmates can earn time credits toward early release by taking part in job training, educational programs, addiction recovery, skills-based workshops. Goal: make inmates more employable before they leave prison. Improves risk of needs assessment. What skills they need, what risks they face, what programs fit them best. Support re-entry service. Partner with nonprofits or private employers. Expand halfway houses, home confinement to help transitioning. Bro, shout out to Donald Trump. Bro, this is crazy.
never more proud of my dad. And again, literally the only things that I advocated for were those things.
Peltier and the sentencing reform.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just did a report up in North Dakota about his homecoming event, and it was definitely interesting. I didn't think it would happen.
Hey guys, here's a quick preview of our upcoming episode that's being referenced called
The FBI. By the way, they were able to do much of it at his, but all of the documentation was available. All of the communications were available at the time of the trial. And the judge wouldn't allow that information to be shared with the jury.
Yeah, I mean, because if you look at the bigger picture, American Indian movement was just one of many groups they were targeting.
Oh, absolutely.
Maybe one of like 150.
Yeah, absolutely.
Never put my motherfucking face on this bitch. The Native American. This is what I hate about liberals and Democrats. I don't know why black people keep voting for this side. Who the Native American, did that crime bill affect that Joe Biden passed? Did it affect Native Americans the most, or did it affect niggas the most? Because last time I checked, the First Step Act, it released black men who were in prison. This is how the Democrats talk around the crimes that they've done to black people and want to bring up other groups of people that wasn't the majority of the people getting affected, that was most that took a hit from this. Right? This is how you know that the Democrats really don't like fuck with black people, because they will not apologize for the crimes against you. They would rather talk about other people and the shit they've done to other people and apologize to other people than apologize to black folks, to black men especially. That he was whooping his ass. That's a great African beat, nigga. A great nigga beat, a great FBA beat, a great Black American beat. The ancestors is within that beat. Stinging Joe Biden for life. That are elite. Oh, I didn't even see that part. Let me go back on it. What are you talking about, ICE?
Philadelphia or Tampa or whatever the hell they are, is that they're openly terrorizing people for the purpose of scaring the shit out of them. You know, people look at this moment in time and they get this
Illegal immigrants that should not be there.
impression. I used to think it was hyperbole. I'm not so sure now. And the comparisons to 1930s and 1939 and 1932 and Kristallnacht and this is the time, and are we before this? Are we after this? And you know, I look at what we're going through right now as more associated with a moment in our own history, which was Reconstruction.
You're talking about, for reference, after the Civil War.
Yes, from 1865 to 1877. What people don't understand about Reconstruction is that we just fought the Civil War, all to 1877.
You're talking about, for reference, after the Civil War.
Yes, from 1865 to 1877. What people don't understand about Reconstruction is that we just fought the Civil War. All of the freedoms which the Constitution guaranteed was guaranteed for Black citizens that had just been released from slavery. And people think there was this great migration, it all fell apart. The Black population, because of the weight of slavery or whatever other excuse you want to make, kind of fell into this communities of poverty and disenfranchisement, blah, 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 blah. Total bullshit. Between 1865 and 1877, the South Carolina state legislature was a majority Black.
I was going to say the state senate that was, I think at the time based in Charleston, was almost all Black.
Yeah, all Black. And on top of that, because by the way, it's a vast majority African-American state after the Civil War in South Carolina. You know, and by the way, which was where the first slaves were delivered in the 1600s, right there in Charleston. And so what happened after the Civil War? This amazing thing, this amazing renaissance. These people that jumped in, that had been in slavery for over 200 years. These communities are thriving. And then you have in, what was it? Colfax, Louisiana.
Is that where the first Klan started?
Not where the first Klan started, but the first major lynching occurred in the sense of this is that
I want him to finish what he's saying. I want to make sure I listen to what he's saying.
you had in Colfax, Louisiana, you had black lawmakers that had gone in to secure the vote in this little town in the courthouse. And white supremacists surrounded the courthouse and they rolled up a cannon and they said, we're going to kill all of you unless you come out and give up this effort to, and they're all wearing masks. Part of them were the local law enforcement. And so the black leadership comes out and they murder them all. And then they go on a rampage and they kill 105 African Americans in Colfax, a little town in
What he's not telling you is those are the Democrats.
Louisiana. What happens? Nothing. So the U.S. government doesn't do anything. The Union troops throughout the South won't take any action. Local law enforcement in the state does not prosecute any of the people. And then the federal government does prosecute a number of the people, but the Jim Crow Supreme Court overturns their convictions. So nothing gets done. So what ends up happening? That happens all across the South, all across the country, is this campaign of violence, a campaign of intimidation.
By the Democrats. I wanted to see.
And by the way, remember, how many states at that time? 16 states, 18 states at the time? You had 14 members of Congress that were black. You had 2 United States senators that were black between 1865 and 1877. And then the door shuts because everybody gave in to the corruption of the Supreme Court, the corruption of the president, Johnson ripping the rug out from under the entirety of Lincoln's Reconstruction Plan. All achieved through violence, corruption, and making a complete and utter mockery of the Constitution.
And there's also this perception, if you look at whenever segregation on public transport was codified with Plessy versus Ferguson, I think it was in 1902, there's this perception because of the voting records of that time that most people supported it. People don't understand, or some people do, but the Klan emerged as a voter intimidation force. It wasn't just simply terror for terror's sake. That was a part of it, but it was to specifically target black area polling stations, voting booths.
It did. And by the way, and that's exactly what they're doing right now, whether it's voter suppression through violence and intimidation or disinformation.
That was being done by the Democrats. Okay, so I'm about to fact check this. We're gonna fact check this. Okay. Share this tab. Okay, it's there. Okay, this is in reference to the 1877 compromise. I read the facts, the honest facts, and the honest breakdown. This is reference to an interview that Hunter Biden was doing on YouTube. In the interview, he was saying that the majority of the senators and the people at the time were black on the board. And basically, he was talking about how during the 1877 compromise, where the Republican president made a deal with the Democrats to remove the Union troops from the South, and because of that, it caused the whole Jim Crow thing. I need information on that time period, and I want to fact check what was said on that interview. I really want to get a scope of what went on during that time, the who, what, where, and why. See that? After the disputed 1876 presidential election, a bipartisan commission awarded the presidency to Republican Rutherford B. Hayes over Democratic Samuel Tilden, in return for the Republicans agreeing to remove all federal troops from the southern states, Florida, Louisiana, South Carolina, which is what Hunter Biden was talking about. This informal agreement, often called the Wormley Agreement or the Bargain of 1877, effectively ended Reconstruction. Who was in power up to 1877? During the Reconstruction, 1867 and 1877, Republican-controlled Congress and presidency, they had placed the South under military district, enforced the 14th and 15th Amendments, and protected black civil and voting rights. It was during this time that Mississippi elected 2 First black U.S. senators, Carl Revels, 1870, and Blanche Bruce, along with multiple black representatives, especially in the states like South Carolina, Georgia, Louisiana, and Texas. So he's correct that you have black senators or black representatives at the time, right? What happened after the troop withdrawal? With the withdrawal of federal troops, Redeemer Democrats quickly regained control of the southern state Redeemer. So they passed Jim Crow laws, enforced segregation, and violently suppressed black voting through disenfranchisement, poll taxes, literacy tests, and intimidation. Federal protection from Reconstruction faded, and black political power sharply declined. Right? Was the Senate board predominantly black? No. While black individuals held some Senate seats, example, Revels and Bruce, most senators in the 1877 were white Republicans or Democrats. Remember, the Republicans had made a deal with the Democrats so that Rutherford B. Hayes can become president. This was the deal. So Hunter Biden lied. He told a half truth, right? The Senate was not majority black. Black representation through historic was still a small fraction of the body, right? Interview check, fact check. True, Reconstruction did temporarily allow black office holding, including Senate seats. False and misleading. There was never a majority black representation in the Senate, even in Reconstruction's peak. True, the removal of Union troops led directly to the rise of Jim Crow and rollback of black rights. You know what I'm saying? So he was lying. So let me play back the clip that Hunter Biden was talking about. Let's go back to the clip.
Information, it's the same goddamn thing. It's what 65 and 1870 believed Leonard, then you had to understand the rest of the story of what the federal government was doing, which was they were systematically murdering members of an organization that were setting out to highlight the injustice that was occurring on reservations across the country. I think that I know why history almost in which agree implemented simply other and easier to Chicago terrorizers this from 1865 to 1877. What people for associate, I love Civil War, fought the Civil War. All of the citizens that populate to this community between 1865 and 1877, the South Carolina state legislature was a majority black.
I was going to say the state senate that was, I think,
the South Carolina state legislature was a majority black.
I just read to you that it wasn't a majority black. So he says South Carolina. So we're going to look specifically in South Carolina. Fact check. Was the majority of South Carolina state legislation black? Okay. Yes. In the lower House of Representatives only. During Reconstruction, South Carolina was unique among former Confederate states in having a black majority in the state's legislative lower chamber. In the 1868 elections, Freedmen voters enabled a legislature with approximately 88 black members and 67 white members, giving black legislators a clear majority in the House of Representatives. This is supported by Eric Foner's research and multiple historians confirming that South Carolina was the only southern state with a black majority, lower house during Reconstruction. See, he only brought up one state, right? Oh shit, so let me see this. But the Senate was not majority black. Black legislators comprised about 1/3 of the state Senate, not a majority. At no point did black legislators control both chambers of the legislature. So he's lying. Again, he told a half truth. Additional context and highlights. South Carolina's 1868 Constitutional Convention had 59% black delegates and produced one of the most progressive constitutions in the U.S. history, abolishing black codes, creating public education, etc. The state saw 29 black U.S. senators and 210 black state representatives during Reconstruction, demonstrated strong representation in state and federal offices overall. However, once federal troops were withdrawn in 1877, Redeemer Democrats seized control. So, Redeemer Democrats. That's a funny way to make it, saying that it's not all Democrats. It was the Redeemer Democrats, right? Seized control, and Jim Crow and voter disenfranchisement followed swiftly, or what many would call the rollback of Reconstruction. Yes, the South Carolina State Legislative House of Representatives had a black majority. No, the Senate did not have a black majority. and blacks never held control of both chambers. Right? So now, I think in the interview with Hunter Biden on YouTube, I don't know if you can go look it up and see for yourself. I think what was being trying to be said is that because there are a majority of black people in the Senate and in the legislature of South Carolina, that it was black people that voted for or submitted to the Compromise of 1877. But we know that if you have white Republicans that dominate in these House of Representatives and Democratic who are also white, and then them making a deal to allow the Republican person to be president and to then withdraw Union troops. I think what's being trying to be said is that they're trying to put the blame on to black representatives. All right. Oh, I haven't shared this. I keep forgetting to share the damn tab. Yeah. So here it is. So this is what I was reading earlier, and you could go you could go and chat GBT yourself and do all this right yourself. Who really controlled the Compromise of 1877? The Compromise of 1877 was a deal between national, Republican, and Democratic leaders, not a state legislative action. President Hayes and the representatives of Southern Democrats made a private agreement in exchange for conceding the disputed 1876 election. Republicans would withdraw federal troops from the South. 13 black members of the Congress of South Carolina legislature had no vote or say in that decision. Let me read this again to you. The Compromise of 1877 was a deal between national Republicans and Democratic leaders, not a state legislator action. President Hayes and the representatives of Southern Democrats made a private agreement in exchange for conceding the dispute in 1876 election. Republicans would withdraw federal troops from the South. 13 black members of Congress of South Carolina's legislature had no vote or say in that decision. Black lawmakers in the South Carolina held power, but not over federal policy. Indeed, during the Reconstruction, the South Carolina House of Representatives was majority black, 88 black versus 67 white. So when people say that the majority of the South Carolina representatives was black, well, as you read before, that was the lower chamber, right? So I'm going to ask ChatGPT what's the difference between those two. While the Senate had about 1/3 blacks. Wow, so let me read this to you right here. Indeed, during Reconstruction, the South Carolina House of Representatives was majority black. Example, 88 black versus 67 white in 1868. While the Senate had about 1/3 black membership, 1/3. All right. They crafted progressive reforms and laws, including establishing public education and civil rights protection. But they were not part of the compromise deal. The withdrawal of troops was a federal decision. Remember, the executive branch is in charge of enforcing federal law. That's why he controls the military and the troops, right? So he can withdraw those troops if he wants to, right? And that was the deal, right? Why is the misattribution doesn't hold up? The deal was negotiated in Washington, D.C. by Republicans and Democratic negotiators, not by black legislators in South Carolina. Those South Carolina representatives had no authority to withdraw federal troops or set national election outcomes. That claim that black lawmakers in South Carolina turned against Reconstruction or agreed to the end of the federal protection is false. Yes, black legislators held majorities locally. No, they had no involvement in Compromise of 1877, which was a top-down federal agreement. Blaming black local politicians misplaced accountability. The deal that led to the end of Reconstruction was driven by national party politics, not local black representatives. Question: what's the difference between lower chamber and the higher chamber of legislation? Because I picked up that you said that during the South Carolina legislators. What's the difference between the higher and the lower chamber? And which one holds more power? The difference between the lower chamber and the upper chamber of legislature. Both bicameral two house legislators, like the U.S. Congress or the state legislators, are split into two parts. Lower chamber, nicknamed the People's House, right, represents the general population, more members, smaller districts, shorter 2 years in Congress, powers initiates tax, spending bills, impeachment, accountability closer to voters, more frequently elected. So this is the upper chamber, the Senate. The Senate, a deliberative body, represents regions like states or counties, fewer members, larger districts, longer 6 years in U.S. Senates, approve treaties, confirms appointments, more insulated, seen as check on the House. So guess who sounds like they have more power? The upper chamber, which is the Senate, have more power than the lower. All right. Why it matters. The House is designated to reflect the will of the people quickly and directly. The Senate is designed to be more stable, thoughtful, and cautious, a check against sudden popular shifts. Right? Upper chamber Senate, same structure but at the state level. The lower chamber House is more populist, reactive, and larger body. The upper chamber Senate is smaller, more stable, and meant to slow things down and deliberately. So which one of these has more power? Because it sounds like the upper chamber has more power than the House based upon its role and responsibility. Virtually both chambers are equal in legislative power. One cannot pass laws without the other, but in practice, the upper chamber Senate often has more influence, which could be more powerful. The reason why Senate feels more powerful, longer term, Senate serve longer terms, 6 years versus 2. So they're more insulated from voter swings. Fewer members, easier to form coalitions and build influence. The House is large and chaotic. Approves key appointments. Senate confirms judges, cabinets, members, and ambassadors. The House doesn't. That's a lot of power right there. So if it can confirm judges and cabinet members and ambassadors and shit, and the House still has no power over it, if the House votes in somebody, or the upper body says, no, we don't agree, we're not going to confirm that nigga. Ratify treaties. Only the Senate has the power 2 to 3 vote needed. Tries impeachments. House can impeach, but the Senate decides guilt or innocence. Woo! That is power. Prestige and visibility. Senates have higher profiles, more media exposure, and often run for president. So y'all is just the House niggas. Y'all were just the House niggas. House has power to just in different ways. That's a more politically correct, softer way. House power starts all spending tax bills, more responsive to public, can impeach. House initiates impeachment charges. But like I said, like what's being said, the Senate decides guilt or innocence. So the Senate can just decide against that shit. All right. Bottom line, technically equal in lawmaking power, but both must approve bills. In practice, Senate has more lasting influence and major decisions, high-level appointments, and national direction. More power than the House. All right. So this proves my point about this whole Marxist shit. Nothing is equal. It's equal in theory, but it's always going to be somebody based upon their roles and their responsibilities that's going to have more power than the other. Right. So no, even when it's sounds equal, there's always going to be something that's just going to be unequal to the other one. Anyway, I want to get into the slides that I have up here prepared. So, yeah. So we're gonna move that. Joe Biden, failure to Black America. The irony, Joe Biden's 1994 crime bill, which he championed, contributed to the mass incarceration of Black Americans during the so-called war on drugs. It imposed harsher penalties for crack cocaine, associated more with Black communities than powder cocaine, associated more with white users. It introduced the 3 strikes rule and mandatory minimums, devastating Black families and communities. Hunter Biden, Joe Biden's son, has openly admitted to long-term crack addiction. But instead of jail, he received compassion, treatment, and privacy. He's been shielded by elite privilege, political power, and wealth. Everything most Black Americans didn't have access to during the 80s and the 90s. The deeper issue. This exposes what many in the Black community have known for decades. The war on drugs was never really about drugs, it was about who was doing the drugs. Black men using or even just possessing crack were painted as criminals. White men or elite men like Hunter Biden were seen as trouble souls, needing therapy and redemption. This is what I explained earlier. A lot of the Italian mob bosses and Russian mob bosses and Irish mob bosses who were involved in the dope game, when they get free and they go on an interview platform and somebody asks them, how do you feel about dealing drugs or dealing dope? They'll tell you, well, we were just trying to live the American dream. And all of a sudden, you understand them and you look at them as human. But when it comes to Black men, our humanity is stripped. And Black men had a reason why they were doing that. They had to hug the block and sell dope during the 80s and the 90s. That was the culture. That was the environment. Right? That was part of American culture. Imagine if in 1989, a young Black man in Brooklyn with a crack addiction had been sent to a small-like rehab retreat instead of Rikers Island. That would have been called being soft on crime. But when Hunter does it, it's called being vulnerable, brave, and deserving of a second chance. I think this refers to an analogy by Angerman when he says that in America, being Black is viewed as being villainous or villain. So anything a Black person does, even though it's good, is considered to be wrong. And because white is viewed as being good, even when white is being wrong, it's seen as him not knowing any better, or him being good. You know what I'm saying? Final truths, thoughts. This is a glaring example of hypocrisy and racial injustice and elite privilege. Not white privilege, but elite privilege, right? Which is why I don't like the idea of a talented 10. Because if W.E. Du Bois is talking about a talented 10% of Black people that's going to dictate the culture of all the other Blacks, right? Then that elite person in that top 10% still has a privilege over the other Black people. And it still creates a class struggle, which is the hypocrisy of Marxism and classism. Marxism and communism, right? What it's going to do is create more dissension. We're in a capitalist society. Everybody has an opportunity to be an elite person based on your work ethic and by your own hand. You could choose to be elite or you could choose not to be an elite. And nobody's going to critique you or tell you what to do because you have your own autonomy, right? Like the best you could do in a capitalist society is create laws that keep people in check and prevent people from violating another person. This is why we're in a constitutional republic. This is why we have a constitution that's supposed to protect each other's freedoms and then provide consequences to people that violate another person's freedoms, right? That's the best you can do, right? Is put laws that protect people's rights and civil liberties, right, to manage the chaos. That's the best you could do. And that is the perfect thing you can do, right? What they claim Joe Biden did to rectify the crime bill. When liberals or Democratic lawyers say Biden fixed the damage he caused, they usually point out the following. The First Step Act, 2018. In reality, this wasn't even Biden's bill. It was passed under Donald Trump's bipartisan support. What they claim Biden supported it has continued its principles. Problem supporting a law someone else passed is not rectifying harm you personally cause. That's like starting a fire and clapping when someone else brings the water. The 2020 campaign promises. Biden's campaign on a platform of ending mandatory minimums, eliminating cash bail, decriminalizing marijuana, funding rehabilitation over incarceration. Problem, most of it hasn't happened. Mandatory minimums are still in place federally. Cash bail still exists in most states. It's largely a state-level issue. Weed is still federally illegal. Biden has increased police funding. So you know how they was accusing Donald Trump of police funding? Well, Biden increased that. How do you nigger liberals miss this? How do the Negro cats, miss all these things that Joe Biden was doing? How do the Negrocrats miss the fact that under Barack Obama, this is where you had all these police shootings of black people? How do the Negrocrats miss this? Right? The Negrocrats. Federal marijuana pardons, 2020. Biden issued symbolic pardons for federal simple marijuana possessions. Problem: very few people are actually in federal prison for that. Most reconvictions are state level, which he has no control over. No one was freed from prison. No criminal records were expunged. The convictions still appear on background checks. So he lied. So when Kamala Harris was talking about, oh, I'm gonna free niggas based upon marijuana, most niggas is not in jail federally for that. They're in jail federally for crack cocaine. Mm-hmm. He did. Rhetorical acknowledgement. In interviews, Biden has admitted the 1994 crime bill had negative effects. Let me get some water right quick. Hold on. In interviews, Biden has admitted the 1994 crime bill had negative effects. He said things like it was a mistake or some parts went too far. Problem: acknowledging harm doesn't equal fixing harm. He has never offered direct reparations, investments, or structural repair to the black communities, destroyed by the policies he championed. No targeted programs to rebuild the lives of those jailed under that bill. Right? Increased funding for public defenders. Criminal justice reform. Some of Biden's budget included money for legal aid, community-based violence programs, mental health support. Problem: these are incremental, generic changes, not targeted redress for what the criminal crime bill did. They don't undo the decades of damage inflicted on black men. Huh? What Biden hasn't done but could have. No formal apology to Black America for its role in mass incarceration. No clemency campaign for nonviolent drug offenders sentenced under the laws he wrote. No federal investment packages to rebuild the communities ravaged by the war on drugs. No executive order to restore voting rights, expunge records, or make reparative justice real. So when liberals say he rectified it, they're often just repeating talking points from MSNBC or DNCPR, confusing symbolism with substance, ignoring that the vast majority of people harmed by the crime bill are still living with its consequences. Joe Biden has not rectified the crime bill. He has barely acknowledged it, and communities destroyed by it are still waiting on justice, not words, not symbolism, but repair. First, let's correct the numbers. Joe Biden did not give 1.3. So this is me and my MMA instructor. We were arguing about this. Shout out to Karate Joe from Queensbridge. We were arguing about this, right? He told me that Joe Biden gave HBCUs 1.33 trillion, and I said that I gave a number that Donald Trump gave to the HBCUs. And immediately, he told me that the $1.3 trillion was a bigger drop in the bucket than what Donald Trump did given. Now, immediately in my brain at that moment, I thought, but hold on. What Biden did was he did a one drop. What was just one drop in the bucket. What Donald Trump did was create a steady stream, an infinite stream. But it wasn't. He didn't acknowledge it. You feel me? So this is Karate Joe from Queenbridge. Shout out to you. This is me defeating your argument, and we're gonna have this debate again. All right. Joe Biden did not give 1.23 trillion to the HBCUs. That's the number is inaccurate. What actually happened between 2021 and 2023, the Biden administration allocated about 16.7 billion to HBCUs. This included 2.7 billion from American Rescue Plan, 3.2 billion from Higher Education Emergency Relief Fund, 10 billion plus from other federal grants, agencies, and programs. These were mostly one-time emergency funds, not recurring. Donald Trump signed the Future Act in 2019, which provided $255 million per year in permanent mandatory funding for HBCUs and minority-serving institutions. Over 10 years, that's about $2.55 billion in guaranteed money. Trump also increased Pell Grant access, forgave some HBCU debts, and set up more favorable funding channels. His impact totaled around $4 billion to $5 billion when you include DOE grants, forgiveness, etc. But the key was permanent structure. So not only did Donald Trump create a stream, he created a whole pond, a whole ecosystem, a whole forest, a self-sustainable revenue. Now let's compare apples to apples. Factor, Joe Biden, total amount estimate, 16.7 billion, mostly COVID relief. So he didn't get something from Congress, he just took it from one, you robbed Peter to pay Paul. Donald Trump, 4 billion, 5 billion over 4 years. Structure, one-time grants, not guaranteed. Annual funding locked in Future Act. So we're going to go into what the Future Act was. Reoccurring, requires no reauthorization or new aid. Yes, guaranteed 255 million a year. Long-term reliability, unclear, depends on Congress and budgets. More stable due to legal structure. Pell Grant expansion, limited changes. Increased access for lower-income students. Debt forgiveness for HBCUs. Some under COVID relief forgave 322 million for 13 HBCUs. So he gave money and forgave money. Which is better? If you want long-term stability, Trump plan was better. He gave HBCUs a guaranteed stream of funding via legislation. It removed the need for annual begging to Congress. It's structural, not situational. If you want emergency relief or short-term boost, Biden's aid looks bigger and on paper, but was mostly COVID-related and not reoccurring. There are no new permanent legislative or locking future support. Final verdict: nonpartisan and honest. Trump's approach was structurally more smarter and more sustainable. Biden was more reactive, larger in volume, but temporary. If you're an HBCU president or planner, Trump's funding stream allows you to plan ahead, hire faculty, expand programs, and secure private partnership with confidence. If you're counting only dollars and not structure, Biden looks like he gave more, but that money isn't locked in for future. It's not. Because they're gonna, with all those HBCUs, they're gonna blow through $1.3 trillion like that. Biden's HBCU funding was emergency-based, not structural. The majority of the $16.7 billion that Biden takes credit for, given to HBCUs, came from redirected COVID-19 emergency funds, not a new permanent federal investment. That money was temporarily tied to pandemic relief and not locked in for future use. Your key point: what happens when the next emergency hits, like another pandemic, recession, or national disaster? An emergency fund is already depleted or redirected. That's a fair and sharp criticism. Biden dipped into a crisis fund to give temporary support to HBCUs, but in doing so, he didn't create a permanent funding pipeline. He undermined future emergency readiness. He made HBCUs dependent on one-time political goodwill rather than locking in their right to exist and thrive. The Karate Joe from Queenbridge, you don't play with me. You know what I'm saying? You tell me something, I'm going to go look that shit up. There's no guarantee Biden can core or will do it again. If there's no new emergency, there's no new HBCU money because that's where the money came from. It came from COVID fund. And if Congress shifts Republican or even fiscally, conservative Democrat, they could easily say, sorry, we don't have the budget for this. The key point, the ongoing costs to maintain HBCUs are real. Faculty, buildings, research, housing, tech. If Biden funding depends on Congress reapproving it every time, what happens when Congress just says no? That's exactly the trap Trump helped avoid. Trump Future Act removed the need for HBCUs to beg every year and made the funding permanent and recurring. $255 million a year locked in by law. Biden hasn't done anything similar. Summary: Biden didn't invest in HBCUs. He gave them a band-aid from an emergency fund. That's like patching a roof during a hurricane instead of building a stronger house. And now if another storm hits, the funds might be gone, and HBCUs are right back at square one, underfunded and vulnerable. Meanwhile, Trump's plan gave them a foundation, guaranteed funding every year without needing political approval. That's the difference between stability and short-term applause. That's the problem with Negroes. You're all symbolism, but no substance. What is the Future Act? Future stands for Fostering Undergraduate Talent by Unlocking Resources for Education. It was bipartisan law signed by President Donald Trump on December 19, 2019. The bill was passed with support from both parties, and it made permanent funding for HBCUs and other minority-serving institutions, something that had previously needed to be reapproved every year, meaning they had to go to Congress and get that shit reapproved. Key features of the Future Act: permanent mandatory funding for HBCUs. The Act provides $255 million annually split across HBCUs, Hispanic serving institutions, tribal colleges and universities, Asian American and Pacific Islander institutions. About $85 million of that goes directly to HBCUs every year, with no need for annual reauthorization by Congress. Why the fuck? Anyway, the fact that these are all part of the, but that's one thing. That means schools don't have to lobby every year to keep the lights on. It's guaranteed. Simplified FAFSA and data sharing. The Act also includes reforms to FAFSA free application for federal student aid process. Makes it easier for students to apply. Reduce paperwork and data verification burden. It authorized the IRS and the Department of Education to share data securely, so students wouldn't need to resubmit the same information repeatedly. Right? Stabilizing the future for HBCUs. The Act helped HBCU plan long-term, hire faculty, upgrade tech, invest in research, improve infrastructure. Before this, HBCUs had to rely on yearly discretionary funding, which was uncertain and politically vulnerable, right? Because when they say politically vulnerable, that means that regardless of whoever's president, Democrat or Republican, if they decide, hey, you know what I'm saying, if under Biden, say for example under Trump, because Trump is there, and say he signs a executive order, this has to happen. If the next president come in there and he does away with that executive order, which is what happened, that's what happened. That's what happened, right? When Biden got into the office, he did away. He reversed that. He took that away off the table, right? Before the Future Act, HBCUs were funded through temporary stopgap measures and had to constantly ask Congress for more money. This created instability. Let me go fact check that. Right, quick. Did Joe Biden, when he got into office, did he reverse the Future Act that Donald Trump put in place to benefit HBCUs, or what really happened during that? Okay, what happened under Joe Biden? Biden did not revoke or roll back the Future Act, right? Funding was actually increased between fiscal years of 2021 2023. The Biden administration invested over 11.4 billion in capacity grants, debt relief, and contracting opportunities for HBCUs. Additional support included COVID relief, American Rescue Plan research grants, STEM expansion, and institutional stabilization. Record investments through FY 2024. Total federal investment into HBCUs from FY 2021 to 2024 exceeded $16 billion, then increased over $17 billion by late 2024. Biden also reestablished the White House initiative in HBCUs and pushed for further expansion through legislative proposal, Build Back Better. You think Biden was going to do that if Trump didn't do that? All right. This was that. Now, could Joe Biden have done it if he wanted to? Yes, if Joe Biden wanted to reverse the Defund the Future Act, he could have tried, but it would have been difficult, controversial, and politically risky. Here's how. Technically, yes, but only through Congress action. The Future Act signed by Trump made $255 million in funding permanent through law. That means only Congress can undo it, not the president alone. Biden would have had to propose a repeal or cut in federal budget, and Congress would need to approve that rollback. So Biden can't just cancel Future Act with the executive order, but he could try to redirect, freeze, or defund it in other indirect ways through budgets or agency discretion, though this would face major resistance. Little consequences if he tried. If Biden attempted to reverse or weaken Future Act funding, massive backlash from HBCUs, black voters, and educational advocates, media scrutiny, damage within Democratic base, empowerment of Republican masses. They'd say Trump gave more to black institutions than Biden did. Bottom line, it would have been so basically it'd have been bad, right? So because this was put into law, Biden couldn't just revoke it. Couldn't just revoke it, right? So when you said that Biden could have left it alone, that means that he attempted to reverse it. Look at Chat GBT fucking. Because I called Chat GBT in that motherfucker. Nigga, bitch ass. So he respected it. So that means he didn't respect it. Okay. So they're not going to publicly praise Trump for anything. So, like, if he honored the founding, but he ignored the credit, which a lot of Democrats have been doing with Trump, especially in the niggercrats, with the Negrocrats. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, let's go back up there. Okay. After the Future Act, that base level of funding became locked in by law. It was structural reform, not symbolic gesture. The Future Act gave HBCUs a permanent seat at the federal funding table, not just a one-time check. Trump didn't just cut a check, he signed a legislation that made consistent federal investment in black education and legal guarantee, something that no previous president had done. Quick summary, right? So that's the summary. Let me go back here and let me put up this. So I looked into this, what Trump actually did that had a positive impact on Black Americans. Right? Record low black unemployment and poverty. Black unemployment hit approximately 5.9% in 2018, a historic low with nearly 1.4 million new black jobs created by February 2020. And I put the sources in here, right, too, right? So y'all can pause this and then go look up the sources. Black poverty fell to its lowest point in decades, the American Presidency Project. Opportunity zones and investment in minority communities created 8,700 opportunity zones, funneling about $75 billion into distressed areas, largely benefiting minority and black neighborhoods. Right? Future Act, right? First Step Act, see that? Ban federal chokeholds in non-life-threatening situations, establish a national police misconduct database, right? Because that's what police reform. So y'all lying when when y'all saying Trump trying to create a police state or some shit, right? Right to work and second chance hiring initiatives. Creative programs to help formerly incarcerated individuals, primarily black men, re-enter the job market. Platinum Plan for Black America. Proposed $500 billion in new capital access, plus job creation and equity-focused healthcare and education reforms. So how is y'all lying that Trump didn't want to invest in Black America? This is capitalism right here. He's giving you access to capitalism. But then again, like I've pointed out, and I'm going to stay pointing it out, a lot of black culture has been influenced by Marxists or socialists. So, you know what I'm saying? Let's go into what is the First Step Act, right? Full name. The problem it addressed. The U.S. had the largest prison population in the world. Mandatory minimum sentences, especially in the 1994 violent crime bill, disproportionately affected Black and Latino men. Nonviolent drug offenders were serving decades for minor or first-time crimes. There was little to no rehabilitation or reentry support for inmates. Core goal, to reduce recidivism and create fairer, more rehabilitative federal prison systems by rolling back harsh sentencing laws, providing inmates with tools to re-enter society, create incentives for good behavior and rehabilitation. All right? Who benefited the most? Black Americans who were overrepresented in the federal prison system saw the greatest impact from sentence reductions and crack cocaine sentence corrections. As of 2020, over 7,000 inmates have been released early under the First Step Act reforms. 91% of those released early were black DOG data, right? The act corrected injustices from older laws like the 1994 crime bill and mandatory minimums that devastated minority communities. That's Joe Biden. Origins. It followed the Fair Sentencing Act of 2010 under Barack Obama that reduced the crack powder disparity from 100 to 1 to 18 to 1, but didn't apply retroactively. First Step made that change retroactive, helping thousands of black men. Right? Final verdict. The First Step Act was one of the most significant criminal justice reforms in decades, particularly beneficial to Black Americans harmed by the 1980s and 1990s tough on crime policies. A bipartisan win, but Trump signed it and deserves credit for making it happen. Right? Trump didn't have to sign that shit. He could have said, fuck it. Fair Sentencing Act. Right? The original problem, under the 1986 drug laws, which I think I read this earlier, right? So y'all can read this for yourself for a bit. Give it time, and then go to next. What the Fair Sentencing Act did, so I'm showing you what it did in 2010. So why is it not retroactive? When it passed in 2010, it only applied to new convictions, not to people already serving long sentences for old crack offenses. Thousands of inmates, mostly black men, were still in prison under the harsher 100 to 1 rule, right? What changed with the First Step Act of 2018? Donald Trump signed it into law. It made Fair Sentencing Act retroactive, meaning people sentenced under the old 100 to 1 ratio before 2010 could not petition for a reduced sentence based on the 810 standard, right? Rural impact. Over 3,000 federal inmates, the majority black, became eligible for sentence reduction or immediate release. Some had already served decades for small crack amounts that would not only get a few years or no time at all. I think I had another slide that I created something with. Okay, let's go on to this. So this is the I made this slide because Joe Biden, like people want to forgive Joe Biden for all his sins that he never addressed to black culture properly, effectively. But when it came to the Asian community during the COVID-19 shit, he speedy Gonzalez fast. All this he is, he moved faster than the speed of a tortoise, than the speed of a snail when it came to the hate crimes that was being committed against the Asian community, right? And it was specific to them. But he's been in office. Not only did he cause the issues with Black Americans with the crime bill, while he was in office under Barack Obama twice, under Bill Clinton twice, while he was in office once. So 4 years, that's 8. Another 8 years, that's 16. 12. He was in there for 12. He was never so quick to address certain group of people, like the Asians, right? He was quick to address that. But he didn't address what was going on with black folks. Let's go into it. During the COVID-19 pandemic, anti-Asian violence spiked dramatically, especially in 2020 to 2021. Many of the attacks were driven by racist scapegoating, falsely blaming Asian people for the coronavirus. Example, China virus rhetoric. High-profile incidents included brutal assaults, murders of elderly Asian Americans, and discrimination across the U.S. All right. What did the law actually do? Expedite hate crime reviews, require the DOJ, Department of Justice, to speed up the review of COVID-related hate crimes, streamline reporting and prosecution process at the federal, state, and local levels. State and local support, providing funding and guidance to help police departments report hate crimes more accurately. So you couldn't report the falsely accused brothers. You couldn't do that properly, but you're able to do this properly, right? Train officers on identifying and handling hate crimes. Establish online hate crime reporting hotlines. Public awareness. Directed federal agencies to raise public awareness about anti-Asian violence and hate crimes in general. Inclusions of all groups. While the law was written in response to anti-Asian hate, it applied to hate crimes against all groups, not just Asians. However, the focus, framing, and motivation behind the law, I'm laughing at the thumbnail I made, right? The thumbnail I made was funny. I don't care what nobody's like. However, the focus, framing, the motivation behind the law were clearly about protecting Asian Americans, given the context of the pandemic. So was it specifically for Asians? Yes, in spirit, the political intention, the title, political intention, the title, the context, and public messaging that focus directly on protecting Asian Americans. Biden and Kamala Harris both gave public speeches highlighting the Asian American community suffering. It was passed after the Atlanta spa shootings and a string of assaults against elderly Asians. But legally, the law was broad. It doesn't only cover Asian Americans. Framework-based, it empowers law enforcement across the board to report and combat hate crimes more effectively. Criticism and questions raised. from the black community and other minorities. Where was the rapid response until the legislation when black men were disproportionately killed by police? Why wasn't there George Floyd Justice and Policing Act passed just as quickly? And I'll tell you why. Because you had Marxists backing you. That's why. Some critics say that this law showed that when political will exists, rapid change is possible, but some urgency hasn't always been applied to anti-black violence and hate crime. Now let me break it down, right? Because in order for Marxism to live and thrive, they need black people to stay in a consistent state of victimhood, downtrodden, and struggling. So they're not going to do things that's going to give you that breath of fresh air of relief so you could get any kind of power or capital power here in America or any kind of justice here in America. Because if you do that, Marxists cannot use the black community or black culture as a weapon. So that's why this is happening. It's coming from nigger Marxists. Which I don't know why black people would adopt Marxism. Marxism and communism is damn near the same as slavery, where the White House is a central power of white people telling niggas how to eat, when to eat, how to fuck, when to breed, and dictating your work effort. Well, the difference between communism and slavery is that with communism, they're so-called redistributing the wealth. They're determining how much money they pay you for the value of your work. But it's the same shit, all right? Even though it applies to all hate crimes, but motivated by anti-Asian attacks and anti-Asian hate crimes during the pandemic. That was the primary focus. There was never a George Floyd Act. There was never a Protect Black Men Act. Even with Black Lives Matter, it used black men, but it was focused on anti-black men at the same time. How the fuck that makes sense? You create Black Lives Matter to highlight black men hate against black men by the police, but you don't address, but you're anti-black male. If you're anti-nuclear family, meaning that you're anti the black man being the head of the household, you're anti-black man. Fast action for Asians, COVID-19 Hate Crimes Act in 2021, took just a few months after the surge in anti-Asian violence and Atlanta spot shooting. Biden and Harris publicly addressed the issue. Congress swiftly passed legislation. DOJ got involved in improving hate crime report. They don't even vote. Do the Asians really vote for anything here in America? Do they run for president? I think they're the smallest minority group. No offense to the Asian community. I'm just saying. Slow, stalled, or symbolic act of action for Black Americans. George Floyd justice. And the reason why I'm saying that is because Black people have put into this American system and barely maybe get like a small drop of justice here and there, right? George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, introduced in 2020 after massive protests following George Floyd's murder. Joe Biden campaigned on police reform, as of today, never passed, stalled in the Senate, despite Democratic control at the time. So hold on. So Democrats were in control of the Senate, but somehow it was stalled. Qualified immunity reform. Biden backed away from pushing to end qualified immunity for police, one of the key demands for Black activists. Reparations, still talking. No serious movement of reparations despite the existence of H.R. 40, a bill just to study reparations, not even implement them. This is your niggercrats. Mass incarcerations or prison reform. Little movement on reversing the border system Biden helped build via the 1994 crime bill. Relies on past reforms like the First Step Act signed by Trump to say he supports change without adding much himself. Old bastard. Old blanket. Go to bed, nigga. So what's the core critique? Biden shows urgency when it's politically safe or when there's a media pressure around a less divisive racial groups like Asians. But when it comes to Black Americans, despite decades of oppression, mass incarcerations, police brutality, lack of generational wealth, his response has been slow, watered down, and completely blocked. So when it comes to niggas, he's slow as a damn snail. When it comes to Asians, he moves faster than the speed of slowness. Joe Biden has shown he can move fast, but chooses not to when it comes to Black Americans, unless it's convenient, symbolic, or election season. This discrepancy is why many Black Americans are becoming disillusioned with the Democratic Party, seeking alternatives, accountability, or independence. So why the fuck did 90% of them vote for Kamala Harris? And you black ass men, like Black American men, like what's up? Why y'all keep voting for things that don't benefit you? Because what? You're not gonna get no black pussy? Black pussy that get y'all niggas in trouble and hemmed up and weaponize your children against you? Anyway, that's all for today. This is Kid Shorty Gaming Nation in the building. You like, you share, and you subscribe for the channel. You know what I'm saying? This is just a sad state of affairs. I don't think Black culture. I don't think Black culture is I don't know. I don't want to say we're done, but for what I'm seeing, it's done. It's done. It's done. And Joe Biden, like I've seen many white men over my lifetime, my 33 years of living, they get to redeem themselves from the sins of their past or from the sins of their father. They get to engage in savagery and they get forgiven for their savagery. Meanwhile, when Black men engage in savagery out of survival, we get a moral talking to, tongue lashing, pause. But anyway, this is Kid Shorty Gamer Nation. Like, share, and subscribe. I'm out.